Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
So we will talk about the Russian ambassador and his assassination shortly. First, though, let's look at what happened in Berlin last night. And I particularly want to have a look at how it has been reported in the mainstream media. So we know that a lorry ploughed through the popular market at Breitscheidplatz, which is near West Berlin's main German media. No, it isn't. Let me say that again. It's in West Berlin. Now, German media have identified the suspect. They've cited security sources as a 23-year-old Pakistani they're calling Naved B, who they say entered the country in either late 2015 or early 2016, okay? That's what they are claiming. Now, the incident happened near Berlin's main shopping street last night. 12 people dead, over 50 people injured at this stage. Now, this guy has denied involvement. Not only that, but later this afternoon, the German authorities gave a press conference and they said they can't be sure that this guy had any involvement in it. What happened was special forces stormed a hangar at an old airport in Berlin, Tempelhof Airport, not used anymore. They believe the suspect was living in a shelter at that location before the attack. So he was seized, they said, after leaving the lorry and running away on foot for more than a mile. He headed towards the Tiergarten area, which is a big public park. Now, a witness who followed him called the police and he was detained near the Victory Column monument. The lorry was discovered with what is believed to be the original driver, a Polish national, dead on the passenger seat. He'd been shot to death. Okay? So that's what we know. However, as I said, late this afternoon, the very same police have now said that they can't be sure that the man detained, Naved B, had anything to do with it. So as usual, for the mainstream media, it's a black and white issue. Those on the right believe that Islam is dangerous and immigration from the Middle East should be halted immediately. Here's Paul Joseph Watson from the very mainstream media InfoWars putting together a video which was online, I believe, only moments after this attack took place. Paul Joseph Watson.
How many trucks need to be ploughed through innocent people before we acknowledge that Islam is not a religion of peace? But this is just a truck crash, says CNN. Not an attack, and definitely nothing to do with Islam. While according to the BBC, a lorry was to blame for the attack. Give me a break. How many terror attacks do we need to see in Germany before Angela Merkel reverses her disastrous open-door migrant policy? This wasn't hard to predict. I said nearly a month ago that Christmas markets in Europe would be attacked. This is an attack on Christianity itself. So what's Germany going to do about it? Ban trucks? Erect barriers around everything? How about not importing terrorists? Just last week, a 12-year-old ISIS-supporting boy tried to bomb a Christmas market in Germany. Germany suffered Islamic terror attacks throughout the summer. All this after around 1.5 million almost entirely Muslim migrants arrived in the country. Is that just a coincidence?
Yeah, it's an attack on Christianity, says Paul Joseph Watson. Islam is not a religion of peace, he said. He said he predicted it as well. That's nonsense. You know, a lot of people were talking about attacks in big cities around Christmas. You didn't have to be Nostradamus. Islam is to blame. Islam. Muslim migrants. Muslims, Islam, Muslims. That's Paul Joseph Watson. A 12-year-old ISIS supporter, says Watson, in one of the most ludicrous tirades ever put together by him on behalf of that station, InfoWars. 12-year-old ISIS supporter. What in the name of all that's sacred could a 12-year-old know about ISIS? Very little. We'll come back to Watson in a minute. It's all black and white. It's all very simple. Because Watson and his puppet master Alex Jones. And Alex's hand is so far up Watson, I'm sure if Watson opens his mouth, you'll see it just behind his teeth. They're telling you now, in a 180-degree turn over the last 5 years, that we, the West, are in mortal danger from the rise of radical Islam. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. More on that in a minute. Now, LBC is a national commercial station in the UK. They're as bad as InfoWars. They don't have journalists, no more than InfoWars does. They have soapbox commentators, polarisers, like James O'Brien, a gobby muppet who, along with his metropolitan bourgeois lefty mates, say that mass immigration is a good thing because it shows the terrorists that we won't be beaten. Extraordinary rant this. James O'Brien on his own LBC programme earlier today.
You know, and I appreciate, again, this might be a difficult pill for some people to swallow, but the refugee policy that Angela Merkel adopted in Germany, although fraught with difficulties and far from perfect, it was by far the most effective kick in the face for ISIL. It was a more effective kick in the face for ISIL than any bomb that could have been dropped on their headquarters or any sniper who could have taken out their key personnel. Because what that did, very simply, was utterly undermine their rhetoric, their narrative, their propaganda. So the propaganda of Islamic State is simple. The West hate us. The West hate you. Even if you were born there, even if you live there, they hate you, they hate you, they hate you. There will never be peace in the Islamic world until we're completely separated from these Western infidels. They hate you, they hate you, they hate you. Go and blow them up. They hate you. Go and kill them. They hate you, they hate you, they hate you. And Angela Merkel, in one fell swoop, absolutely punched the living daylights out of that position. Absolutely destroyed that position.
Again, like InfoWars, it's all black and white. This time, they hate our freedoms. They hate our way of life. They want to murder us. We can't change. We have to be compassionate. Merkel did the right thing. Simple. She opened the borders last year, left nearly 900,000 people in unchecked. That's the right thing, says O'Brien. Now, I'm not agreeing with Watson here. I'm just juxtaposing the two positions and showing how each of them is as narrow-minded as the other. Just as narrow-minded, O'Brien, as the claptrap you heard from the gormless, monotoned, monotonous clown Paul Joseph Watson. A very simplistic view of what's happening. To feed an audience, the audience they are feeding is an audience that wants their worldview confirmed by their favourite commentators. Nobody's been asked to think for themselves. But that's no good, is it? Because to subscribe to InfoWars or to LBC's narrative, you basically have to ignore everything that has happened in the Middle East in the last 40 to 50 years. The recent colour revolutions, funded by NGOs with ties to George Soros and other philanthropists, in inverted commas, in America. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, based on a pack of lies that have killed millions of people and displaced more. Conflicts that have created great vacuums where stable governments have been brought down, leaving that vacuum to be filled even by hardline Islamists, who are the minority, but whom are armed to the teeth by the West's proxies like Saudi Arabia, Israel and others. Remember, Syria didn't have a terrorist problem. It didn't have a radicalisation problem. It had a moderate, reluctant reformist president hailed by the United Nations as a visionary. Now, much of the country is in ruins. Millions have fled. Millions more have been killed. And Paul Joseph Watson and James O'Brien, though coming from different perspectives, want you to believe the same thing. It's radical Islamists. That's the reasons. Nutters, hell-bent on imposing their version of Islam on the entire world. Both the left and the right agree on that, but it isn't true. That's not what's happened in Syria or Libya and Iraq. Now, when I say it isn't true, I'm not saying it isn't true. Is it radical lunatic jihadists exist? Of course they do. How did they get there? Now, surely James O'Brien and Paul Joseph Watson knew that yesterday the Syrian ambassador to the United Nations, Dr. Bashar al-Jafari, made a statement after the UN Security Council approved a new resolution on Aleppo. Among other things, al-Jafari said the reason why certain UNSC, that's United Nations Security Council members, were pushing so hard to pass the resolution, which would provide for the access of UN monitoring groups to Aleppo. According to Jafari, the Syrian government possesses information about foreign military intelligence officers who are still inside the remaining jihadist-held pocket in the eastern part of Aleppo, and that the resolution was only for one reason: to allow these foreign agents and advisors safe passage out of the besieged city, along with the jihadists they were training. This is truly extraordinary. Listen to Bashar al-Jafari, the Syrian ambassador to the United Nations. This should have been front page news on every newspaper in the Western world today, but it isn't. But it's the most important thing you could hear today.
I would like finally to share with you this information. The Syrian competent authorities have gathered information saying that many foreign officers, intelligence and military officers, who are in the eastern part of Aleppo with the terrorist groups are trying to exit their strongholds in the eastern part of Aleppo. I will say before you their names and their nationalities. Mu'taz Oglakan Oglu, Turkish. David Scott Winner, American. David Shlomo Aram, Israeli. Muhammad Sheikh al-Islam al-Tamimi, Qatari. Muhammad Ahmed al-Sabyan, Saudi. Abdul Mun'im Fahad al-Hreij, Saudi. Ahmed bin Nofal al-Drej, Saudi. Muhammad Hassan al-Subay'i, Saudi. Qasim Saad al-Shumari, Saudi. أيمن قاسم الثعالبي سعودي. أمجد قاسم الطراوي Jordanian. محمد الشافعي الإدريسي Moroccan. These Syrian moderate opposition individuals who have foreign citizenship and nationalities are trying to escape from the eastern part of Aleppo with the terrorists. And this is why you saw this hysterical move in the council for the last 3 days, because the main purpose is how to rescue these terrorist foreigners, intelligence officers from the same countries who pushed for the adoption of the resolution out of Aleppo.
Simple as that. What the Syrian government should try to do is to detain these criminals and ensure that they get a proper and just trial, and they're afforded all the same protections as anybody else who is accused of a crime, and they are given access to effective counsel. Try and get them. Show the world this is what has been going on since way back in 2009. Staggering this. Where was this when Paul Joseph Watson and James O'Brien were presenting their tired, boring, monotonous monologues about why this has happened? Surely they knew about it. But I don't know. You better ask them. Now, on what happened in Berlin yesterday, Angela Merkel addressing the media today, well, she had this to say.
We must assume it was a terrorist attack. It would be very difficult for us to learn that a human being committed this deed who came to Germany to ask for refuge and asylum. It would be terrible for all of the Germans who are very active day by day in helping asylum seekers and refugees. It would be repugnant for them.
Repugnant indeed. And it isn't fair to label people as racist who ask, well, why did you take in nearly 1 million when there was the very real possibility that terrorists would be among the homeless, the bereaved, the bewildered, the genuine asylum seekers? Why Did you do that? Now, on Saturday, Stuart Peach, who is the head of the armed forces here in the UK, rather prophetically said that jihadists were hiding in plain sight with refugees. This was Saturday.
We face, as my friend Andrew Parker has said, as the Director General MI5, a potential network of combat experienced terrorists. On the other hand, they're losing territory rapidly. Foreign fighters are being killed and displaced, but they're moving in migrant flows, hiding in plain sight. One of the obvious deductions, and I think it does bear more scrutiny from the younger and the analytical community, is how we manage identity in a world where people are deliberately trying to destroy their identity documents and or their moving migrants' flows. And I think it's a very important subject.
It's a very important subject indeed.